Town of Pierson special budget meeting for Thursday, September the 5th, 2024 at 6:02 p.m. will now come to order. Vaughn, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mayor Samuel Bennett.
Here.
Vice Mayor Robert Greenland.
Here.
Councilwoman Lenny Richardson.
Here.
Councilwoman Randy Peterson. Here. And I am our president.
Thank you. Yes, at this time, please bow for the invocation. Dear Father in heaven, thank you for this day. Thank you for everyone that is here in attendance. And thank you for all the rain that we've been getting, much needed rain. Be with us as we consider the business before us. And I ask all this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Under new business, budget workshop and millage rate first reading. And I know that Brian, you've been working on putting all this together for us. I'm gonna let you go.
Okay, so we'll start, they're all kind of numbered on here, so we'll just start with a summary. These numbers are based on a couple different things. A lot of the expenses are based on an average of what we spent last year. As you'll remember, we had the little budget workshop where we amended the budget. We had moved some stuff around because there were things that weren't being utilized. So these are based on the amended budget numbers, which were closer to what we actually brought in and actually spent. So looking forward, there's only a few things that we know for sure. One of those is the property tax income that we'll receive, because that's based on the millage rate that we're going to adopt. So we have that number. There's certain expenses that we know for sure, like the sheriff's contract, we know for sure, which, by the way, since I did this worksheet, the sheriffs have sent over their contract, and it is higher than they told us it was going to be by $15,000.
Really?
Yeah, it went from 304 to 319 this year. So found that out yesterday afternoon.
Who was that told us they were going to stay the same?
They had told us they were going to stay the same.
Yeah, we had somebody come and sit down with me and Ryan and go over it and said it was basically the same.
It was within a couple $100 of last year, and then yesterday when they sent it. But the caveat there was they took their own budgeting back in-house instead of letting Volusia County handle it. And they did tell me and Yvonne that those numbers could change as they went through the year and worked on their budget. So they did at the very last minute. So that this budget doesn't include those numbers, but there are certain numbers that are sort of baked in, so to speak. Insurance renewal is going to be what it is. So those numbers are in here, but a lot of this stuff is just projected, right? It's based on where we were at last year. Now, you'll keep in mind that the last two audits that we had with Jim warned that we weren't in the greatest place if you subtracted out the ARPA money, and that ran out this year. Mm-hmm. So what you'll see in front of you on the general fund is a total projected revenue of $1,774,000 on page 2 up there in green. And again, that's an estimate. It could be higher or lower. A lot of this stuff depends, obviously, on what's being spent in the county or the state. So, for instance, the half-cent sales tax that we receive, it's a portion of all sales. If sales are up, we get more money. If sales are down, we get less. Last year didn't quite meet the projection. Hopefully this year, this year I budgeted closer to what we actually brought in last year. It may be higher, so. But these are basically just based on estimates of where we stood here at the end of this year. So total income projected at about 1,774,000. And then if you flip all the way to page 5 of the general fund sheet, you can see the expenses are 1,139,111, and that leaves you with a deficit of 138,000. So what you do in that scenario, and I talked to Jim about this, is you basically have, you call them reserve funds or carryover, from last year or previous years. In a business setting, you call that retained earnings. We don't call it that in a municipal setting. But essentially, you're taking your surplus from years prior and plugging that in here to balance your budget, which is what we've had to do here. So I talked to Jim. Jim's advice on that is going forward into this next year, we have to really focus on revenue. A portion of that is recouping stuff that we spend, like we talked about the last council meeting, permit fees. We're spending twice what we're bringing in, or 3 times what we're bringing in.
Yeah, we got to get that.
So we're going to have to start looking at stuff like that. We're also going to have to get serious about trying to rent some rooms, lease some stuff, maybe get creative and turn the cafeteria into something that can be rented by the day, by the weekend, just like we do the community center. But that's where our focuses are going to have to be. Now this, as you see at the top of the very first page, this is all based on the preliminary millage rate that we adopted, which is the same millage rate as last year, 5.2439. That will, at that millage rate, you're going to get about $468,500 in property tax revenue. If you were to go with your rollback rate, you're only going to bring in $441. So then if you look again at your last page, the difference there would be, instead of having a deficit of 138, you'd have a deficit of 165. So, my advice is we probably need to stick with our current millage rate because the budget is already kind of underwater without it, or, with that baked into it. In other words, if you went with the lower one, you just put yourself further in the hole. And of course, now that number 2 is going to change because now we found out the cops budget is $15,000 higher. So that's kind of an overview of where we're at. Now, what I will tell you is this is 5 pages. If you flip through the 5 pages, you'll see some stuff highlighted in yellow. Those are numbers that aren't hard and fast numbers. In other words, there's certain things that you're never going to be able to cut from. You're not going to be able to cut from the cop budget. It is what it is. You're not going to be able to cut from general liability insurance. It is what it is. Payroll is pretty constant unless you were to get rid of people or shuffle, stuff around. So the only places that you would ever really be able to cut from anything if you wanted to try to reduce your deficit would be these things that are highlighted. It's vehicle repair and maintenance. It's building repair and maintenance. But I would just advise to be really careful with that because the budgeted numbers here are very close to what we spent last year. So I'm afraid if you cut too much from that, you may end up just going over. If you assume that your repair costs are going to be similar or your maintenance costs are going to be similar. But if you felt you needed to cut from somewhere, it would be from all those columns highlighted in yellow. And of course, we can revisit this monthly or quarterly. We can make amendments all year if we see we're not utilizing something or we're doing better on revenue than we thought we were, or, we can it's a fluid thing that we can kind of readdress as we go through the year. But this is just where we stand right now based on last year's figures and this year's projected figures. I know that was a lot, but any questions? And I know there's a lot of accounts here. If you don't understand what something is on here and you want to know, hey, what is, like for instance, I think when Sergia and I talked, and she had looked at this before, She asked me about, we have an expense category called contractual. She wanted to know what that is. Contractual is the cleaning people, the pest control people, ADT, alarm monitoring, the computer people, Vertec, the kind of stuff that, services, contractual services that we have. So, I mean, if there's anything on here that you don't know what it is or you'd like clarification, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Everything's up. The health insurance, everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Surprisingly, the one thing that went down for us this year was general liability, but it's because we got rid of the bank building. And so our property values, the amount of insured property came down a significant amount. So I think we're actually saving $4,000 on general liability insurance this year. But I will say, if you look at the breakdown of the insurance, the workers' comp and the auto both went up significantly. So there were increases, just not overall.
And that's odd to me, the workers' comp going up. We've not had a claim.
I was gonna say, we haven't had a claim, have we?
No, but a lot of the workers' comp insurance is based on the industry as a whole. They come up with those numbers based on the number of claims being filed by people who work in that field. So, unfortunately, we're victims to that in the construction industry when I used to work for my dad, right? Like, every year they'd go up and I'd say, we haven't had a claim, and they're like, but these 100 businesses did. They hit cables, they damaged roads, and so your general liability went up. So workers' comp kind of works the same way.
They audit that every year, so I mean, it should kind of balance. But workers' comp's a rip off. All insurance is a rip off.
Yes, it is.
But you have to have it, or you
have to
don't
have it.
have a driver's
You gotta
license,
pay-
or
you
all
gotta
this
play the
kind of
game,
thing,
So
right?
unfortunately, it's just one of those necessities that, trust me, I would love nothing more than to put that $105,000 somewhere else.
Yeah.
A couple things to keep in mind when we talk about reimbursable stuff. I read the contract from Volusia County Library earlier. Volusia County Library doesn't pay us rent, but they are responsible for all utilities. But right now, they're paying their power bill and the water. So it's little things like that. I mean, it's not going to make a huge dent, but when you've got little things like that all over town that we should be recouping that we're not recouping, we just got to read that kind of stuff and fix it. I'll get to the water when we look over the water thing. But if
Well,
you have,
I have a question. Did we own that building they're in now? Did we pay the power over there?
I don't think we do. No,
So-
we don't pay the power.
They pay their
They
own
pay
power.
their
We just need to have them switch that once they're
And what we really probably need to do is we probably need to call Duke Energy and ask if these buildings can have their own meters versus, because right now they all run off a meter number.
Right, yeah, that needs,
Because if you're going to do it in the future, if you're going to rent it out, it's nice to be able, I mean, even if you don't rent it out, it's nice to be able to say building 2 cost us X amount a month, right? So, but we'll have to do the legwork on that. We'll have to call Duke and get someone out here and see if they can do that.
That's a good summary, though. We've got a real outstanding capital investment here. By having the new town center, we do have rooms that we're going to be able to, we should be able to rent and get some additional income.
I mean, other towns are going through this too. Pierson is unique in that, the land can go up a couple of fractions of a percent on the millage rate and make $2 million. We just don't have the real estate. in
our
Pierson to do
tax
that.
base isn't big enough. It's just not big enough, the way things are costing now.
So one of the things, while we're on a general fund budget, like I'll bring up North Road, for instance. I called today. I haven't gotten any calls back yet, but I reached out to Surety. I also reached out to Ameris Bank, who does municipal financing, to see if we can finance that even over like 5 years, because budgetarily speaking, it would help you if you could stretch that stuff. In other words, if we're going to do a road repair, let's pay $12,000 a year for 6 years rather than $64,000 in a lump sum. That will help us with the budget. So I think I've mentioned that before in council meetings, but we have to be smarter about how we pay for stuff, I think. That'll stretch our budget further. There's no reason why a town should be afraid of having loans and lines of credit. I mean, you're a town. You know, people like Daytona pay off stuff over a 30-year period, right? I'm not suggesting we do that for little things, but I mean, there are options to keep the yearly budget from going haywire. So when we're talking about repairs or even big purchases, you know, it might be smart to look into more of the financing options. That way, you know, you're paying for a fraction of it every year versus all in one.
So we definitely need to look into that and have something available to us.
I've got some calls out.
Good deal.
I don't know what's available. I don't know what's required. I don't know, you know, if they require some kind of a pledge or they want a fraction of your ad valorem taxes or whatever. As a municipality, it's different. I've never dealt with it, I'll admit. But these banks obviously want to make money, so I'm sure they'll put me in touch with someone that can give me that info.
I would think so. What do you reckon? I mean, I'm taking that, getting back to fees that was brought up at our last meeting. I would think that all the municipalities in the county cover. We're probably the only city that's not doing it right now.
Did you say DeLand, their permit collections, they had,
They nickel and dime people forever.
They make you a copy of your permit or they make you a copy of any of your paperwork they charge you for it.
I mean, I'm not suggesting we do that, but
Right.
other cities are not losing money on permitting. In fact, most of them are making money on it. They're not even breaking even there.
I think we're gonna pull back a lot of money starting to do that. Take Christian's invoice and start billing it back, Mark's invoice, billing it back, the engineer guy that has to, I mean, we gotta start charging the people back.
You know,
I mean, why is the town of Pierson
we
paying?
can't
If they're
continue
the
to
county,
do it.
they're gonna pay.
So Mark brought up a very good point. Mark brought up a very good point about that. I talked to Mark Correct for a little while today. And you know, we had some people in the audience before say, you're a town, we pay taxes, so why are we having to pay extra on top of taxes? But like Mark said, if we're doing something in service of you specifically, a permit, planning and zoning, why are all the other residents of Pierson responsible for paying for your services? So the town offers stuff collectively, right? We maintain roads and parks and
Right.
that kind of thing. But if you were coming in here for a service, whether that's permitting, planning, to talk to an attorney, whatever, then yes, you personally are responsible for that because we are doing it specifically for you. And I had never really thought about it that way, but it makes sense. I mean, why should everyone's taxes pay for, you know, Yvonne to get a permit to build something?
that's a privatized.
Right.
So we do need to make sure that from now on, people we're recouping that money from people. I'm going to suggest maybe after all the budget stuff is over, maybe me and Yvonne sit down with Universal, figure out how they came up with these fees. How do we increase them and bring them more in line with what other cities? Obviously, we're not going to get what people like DeLand do, but there's a huge rift between what we get now and what other towns get for roofs or whatever. But I think we're going to have to sit down with them and come up with something and then do maybe a workshop and talk about increases to stuff like that. Because I will tell you, I looked at their invoice and it's about $900 for administrative, which is Dakota in the office who actually does the permits. And then it's $900 for the engineer, which is the person who comes here, signs off on the plans. Okay, well, that right there is $1,800 a month before any inspections or anything, and we only do like 6 permits a month. So I don't even know if the permits cover all their administrative fees. So then that becomes a discussion of, do we look into other methods of, like Volusia County, you could do an interlocal agreement and they handle permitting for other cities. You know, but there have to be other options out there if we can't figure something out in Universal. But that'll be something we have to look at maybe in October after all this is over.
So about every permit that gets issued here, there's like $1,800 of administration and.
Well, a month. So in other words, if you've got 2 permits a month, we're still paying the administrative fees.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that inspections, we
Yeah.
told people, hey, inspections are free on Wednesday because he's here every Wednesday. But he's still charging us $136 per inspection.
Yeah.
And we've just been giving them to people for free
Yeah.
on a Wednesday. I don't know why we do that, and it would be different if he charged just like a flat fee. Hey, I'm here on Wednesday for this amount. I'll do as many as you've got. But it's not. It's $136, 2 hours, $68 an hour per house that he goes to. Even if he's only there for 20 minutes, he's charging us 2 hours. So, you know, it's a lot. The permits are a lot. And again, you know, is it going to make up the $138,000 that you're in a deficit? No, but it'll get you 20 of it.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, if you chip away at it from all these different angles where we've just been letting it go, we'll be in a lot better shape, I think. And again, this, I'll just remind everybody, this is a very conservative budget in terms of, I didn't go crazy with numbers. You know, so in other words, you may do way better. We may get more income than I've got factored here. But I just tried to base it on what we know from the last couple of years. So.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
On that inspection fee, but if you go out and inspect John Doe's house and he charges $136, if we don't collect that on the permitting costs, basically every taxpayer in Pierson is kind of paying that bill.
Right.
Yeah.
Whoever that person is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not, no.
That's right.
Yeah.
All the time inspection. I just had a question. I thought I understood. Thank you.
I don't know if Sergio, the sheriff contract went up, the quote that they had originally given us, it went up $15,000 more. So what's the total?
Instead of 304, it's going to be 390.
It's 319. I can give you the exact number if you want.
It's okay.
It's 319. I didn't change these sheets just because this is what got published. This is what got published in the paper, so this is what I have to present to you. This is the current proposed budget. But before the next one, we'll have to agree tonight to update this. I think you as a council have to instruct me to update this. And then at the next meeting, when I come to you, it'll be updated.
Yeah, just like you, it's the last
It is sheriff's budget 319,650.
Actually, it was the new lieutenant that was here at our last meeting.
Mm-hmm.
He reported to us that it would stay the same.
Someone from the sheriff's office actually came and met with me and Yvonne. He gave me a whole sheet that showed me what everyone's contract would be for the whole county. And I'm wondering how they're dealing with this news because I think Lake Helen's was 600 and something thousand originally. So who knows what their increase was. But, you know, I thought it might change a little. I didn't think it was going to change $15,000.
What did you say about Lake Helen?
When the sheriff's office came and met with Yvonne and I, they brought us a sheet that showed us, here's where our budget forecast is for the year. And it had a breakdown of every other city that they are contracted with. And was it Lake Helen or was it Oak Hill? One of them is like $615,000. I think it was Oak Hill. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Oak Hill's not, obviously have a different tax base than we do, but they're not, population-wise, they're not a whole lot different than us, but it's considerably more. So I'm wondering how big their surprise increase was when they got their email this week.
Didn't that increase last year?
If it did,
It wasn't a lot.
very minimal, you know, a couple $100 or something. It was not.
See, what happened, Sergio, is the county used to control a lot of that, and then the Volusia Sheriff's Office broke off and became its own entity separate from the county, so now they do their own budgeting, and they have all that in-house, and so they tried selling it to us like a good thing. Oh, it's great, because like we'll have a much tighter control of it, and the county just bases it on, these random numbers. Well, surprise, yeah, it's gonna cost us more, which I'm sure in their budget, they're probably also accounting for increased insurance, increased payroll, increased fuel, and that's probably why it got changed at the last minute. And just so you know what you're looking at, I should have explained this in the beginning. Okay, so the first column there, October 2023 to July 24, that's to the end of July. Those are actual numbers. That is actual. I reconciled the accounts. I input everything. That was the actual number at the end of July. Traditionally, what we do is then we estimate what August and September will be. So if you look at that second column, that is with the last 2 months of the fiscal year estimated and added in. So it may change a little bit. It's not going to be a lot because I just took the average over the year. So at the end of September, when I reconcile everything, those numbers may be different in that second column. It's only going to be within a couple $100 to a couple $1,000 here and there. But you want to work with like a full 12 months worth of numbers. That's why we estimate the last 2 months and add it all in there like it is. And then the third column, budget, this is last year's budget number, fiscal year 2024. And then the very last column on the very far right is your budget for this year. So if you wanted to see how they compare between the 2 years, you can compare that middle column and that outside column. But really what the budget numbers for this year are based on are that second column, October 23 to September 24 estimated. That is our estimated annual cost for all these things. And so the budget number is pretty much based on that, unless it's something weird like, the insurance or the sheriff's budget where we know the exact number. Then they just put the exact number. I think last year our budget meeting was really late for some reason into September, and so Jim actually had all the numbers in there, I think, through August, so he only had to estimate out just the month of September. But this year I had to do 2. Any other questions on general funds? You can see, I'll give you an example. If you look down 314-1000, Duke Energy utility tax, you can see where our actual number is going to be about $47,000 in income that we receive from Duke Energy as a utility tax. But last year, we had estimated it super high at $61,000, so we fell short there. So that's another reason this year's budget is short, because last year, some of our estimates were, and again, a lot of the time it's based on the year before. So you may have made a ton of money the year before in Duke utility fees, but that didn't materialize this year. So, and again, for all we know, things pick up and then we get 61,000 and we're 20,000 over our budget, which would be great. We'd have a surplus in that account, but I didn't want to do that and hurt us more, I guess.
have under this new business that this is the first reading of our millage rate. So this would be our first reading. And then when do y'all know when the date of the final?
It has to be 2 weeks from today.
2 weeks from today.
Right. Isn't that right? We have basically any time within 15 days of this meeting. So we figured if we did it for 2 weeks, because it has to have time to be advertised in the paper. So we figured we would set it 2 weeks from today.
So 2 weeks from today, what would that be?
It's the 5th, should be the 19th.
And just, again, just to state for the record, this is based on our current proposed millage rate, 5.2439. That is what these budgeted numbers are based on.
Well, since this is the first reading, I want to make a motion that we go with millage rate 5.2439.
We have a motion on the floor by our Vice Mayor Robert F. Greenland to go with the current millage rate of 5.2439. Is there a second? Second by Councilwoman Lenny Richardson. Ready for the question? Give a roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Brandy Pierson,
Yes.
Councilwoman Lenny Richardson.
Yes.
Councilwoman Sergio Cardenas,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Robert Greenland,
Yes.
Mayor Samuel Bennett.
Yes. So carried.
Let me ask you something. The proposed taxes that we got in the mail last week, was that based on our current millage rate?
Yes.
That's what I thought. I just wanted
Which is what this.
to verify that. Yeah, make sure that. And not the 4 point, the rollback.
No, it's the current one.
Okay.
Yeah, we had to have that into the county 2 or 3 weeks ago because they print all those.
We made that decision at our first.
At the workshop, the little special meeting we did a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Let me ask y'all this. I noticed on some of mine, the school board has doubled my assessment. Did y'all notice that?
I haven't opened mine, don't want to.
I wish the heck I had.
opened mine
believe
in
me.
double.
But yeah, I am glad because you've got till the 13th, I believe, to appeal it. Yes, appeal.
I'll open mine.
Yeah,
School
I'm
board
really going.
budget needs to be delved into.
I'm telling you, yeah,
They said the fire was high.
I don't know.
Yes.
yeah, it is. Fire's high. Yeah, school board is high. My assessment, like I said, it doubled. There's three line items on my tax bill that's associated with the school board. And all three of those items doubled on certain pieces of my property.
And you know what they're wanting? They're wanting everybody to go volunteer to be crossing guards and all this stuff because they ain't got enough money to pay for sheriff's people. Yeah.
They cut a ton of teachers' budgets this
Right.
year up at Taylor because my cousin is a teacher and now her class sizes are like 38 kids.
Wow.
Because they had to get rid of like so many percentage of their teachers. So
Maybe they start cutting at the top and work
Well,
their way back down.
I will tell you,
Right.
what supposedly happened there is they fell victim to, they also got COVID money, ARPA money, which only lasted 4 years, and they used that to hire a bunch of like upper management people, and then when they ran out of ARPA money.
Management
they
people.
didn't need upper
Management people instead of damn employees.
They
Yeah,
didn't
school.
cut anybody at the district.
Instead of the
Teachers.
sheriffs and stuff to protect them.
Yeah, they didn't cut anybody at the district level. They made,
Yeah.
and then the crazy thing is what they did is they came up with budgets for each individual school, and then they handed the budget to the principal at the school and said, you get to decide who you cut.
Wow.
So it makes them look like the bad guy.
I think they usually send the budget to the school. It goes to SAC, right, Donna? Doesn't it usually go to SAC? I think it does for approvals.
There were some employees at the high school that were pretty upset this year because
I bet.
they lost some good people and retained some that they didn't want to retain. So.
It looks like you're doing a pretty good job here, Ryan. I know you put a lot of work in it.
Well, this was general fund, but we still gotta go over.
Yeah, oh, I know it. I know. I'm fixing to say, you want to go on to the water budget now?
I mean, there are letters, do we have to do it as like a, Mayor Bennett, do you have to say like 4B or 4C? I don't know how this works. Do we just present it all at one time?
Yeah, we can go ahead. We voted on the
Okay.
our millage.
I didn't want to move ahead if we had to, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so water fund budget is actually pretty simple in comparison.
Right.
The water fund budget is actually not submitted to the state as part of the audit. So it's not as severe if you go over, under, that one actually was pretty simple this year. I mean, a majority, a bulk of your income in the water fund is obviously from water usage. We also have the Verizon lease for the Verizon equipment on top of the water tower. And we've also still got the grants, the sewer grant and the CDBG grant. Now, the CDBG grant only has $10,000 left on it of administrative fees. That goes to our grant writer. Once they close out the well project, that 10 grand just gets paid out and that'll be gone. So you're not going to have any CDBG income from that grant this year. But I did go ahead and I budgeted for $50,000 for the sewer design grant, because Yvonne and I do have some expenses for meat and hunt that we will have to apply for reimbursement for this year. So it could end up being more than that. It could end up being less than that. I just picked the number. You can see that last year we brought in $89,000 for that grant as reimbursement, but that was partially because it hadn't been done in about 15 months. So I doubt we're going to have $89,000 worth of reimbursements for that grant this year, but maybe, depending on how much work they do on it. And then everything else in the water fund, if you see there about 2/3 down the page, you've got personnel. The reason there's personnel here and also in the general fund is because we allocate 25% of all of the employees' payroll, FICA taxes, health benefits, all that stuff to the water fund. Utility clerk Marcy, her entire pay insurance comes out of the water fund because she is the dedicated water clerk. So that's what that is for. Also, you'll see, if you look at page 2 on that one, things like legal counsel, auditing and accounting. That is actually because the water fund also splits those costs. So in other words, Christian's costs, 25% get billed to the water fund. Jim's auditing fee every year, half of that goes to the water fund. So these numbers are just, they're actually, paid out of 100% out of the general fund, and then the water fund reimburses the general fund for that. So what you see here is whatever percentage, like for instance, the $15,000 in accounting, that's 50% of Jim's annual audit fee. Same with the payroll. I've gone ahead, the payroll numbers in here are already allocated 25%. So if you go back and look at the ones on the general fund, if you're curious later, that's 75% of the payroll cost. The other 25% in the water. A lot of the water stuff really, which makes sense, is utilities, because obviously the water fund is also paying for power at the plants and things like that. And then obviously repair and maintenance. Our big thing with the water fund is, we just had all those repairs at the tower. The guys are fixing broken lines all the time. So most of the stuff that comes out of the water fund expense-wise is just maintenance on the system. You'll see there that there is a postage. Postage is very high. That's because we have to mail out 750 water bills every month. So postage is a big one. You'll also see that professional services is very high on here, but keep in mind that professional services is, a lot of it is meat and hunt for the sewer system, and that is reimbursed in that income account at the top of the sheet for the grant. So they kind of cancel each other out. Normally, if we weren't working on a project like that, the professional services column would be way less. But obviously, they're doing a ton of stuff on the 2 grants, so. And then usually what happens is at the end of the year, after everything is said and done, the water fund just transfers money to the general fund to cover its share of all the expenses. Unless for some reason it's not there, maybe the water fund had a bad year or a huge expense or something, and in that case, they just owe the general fund money. Last year, I will tell you, was the first year in many years, the previous clerk had just let that account build up. So last year was the first time Jim was kind of amazed that we had zeroed it out. That was the first time the water fund had paid back like 4 years worth of stuff that it owed to the general fund. So one thing I will say about this, and I'm still researching this, when we're talking about income and needing to increase income, Mark Perret told me today that the council passed an ordinance when they got the sewer grant that there were baked in increases every year for water fees. It started when we raised it to 1766 for base usage. But Mark said somewhere we promised the state, it was a requirement to get that grant, that we would do an increase. I think it follows like cost of living, 3% or 5% every year. We have not done that in 4 years. I'm trying to get my hands on that because Mark warned that if the state ever finds out you haven't done that, that's a problem. So he said starting October 1st, definitely increase it to what, maybe not what it needs to be from 4 years ago, but definitely whatever that first year increase was supposed to be, 3% or whatever, we need to go ahead and do that. I would argue that it probably is better to increase in small amounts every year versus a $2 increase every 5 years, because then people's heads explode. Why is this going up $2?
I agree.
So I need to put my hands on that because Yvonne and I looked today. The one we found was just the original increase when it went to 1766. But just be prepared. I'll probably bring that to a council meeting just as a general item to say, hey, we did this. But like Mark said, it's already in an ordinance, so there's no voting on yes or no. It's
already there.
It's already done. I just have to figure out what to raise it to. And that'll have to start October 1st.
And something else. Once we get these 2 other wells online, there's going to be added cost incurred.
Well, yes. You're going to double your chlorine. You're going to double all of your.
Right.
So, for instance, right now Biometrics is here 2 hours. They say 2 hours a day for 6 days a week or whatever the allotted time is.
That's going to increase.
Right. So Monday. We have a pre-bid meeting because we passed the request for proposal to have people put in a bid to become a water operator. Biometric will probably still bid on it, and they have every right to do so. There's a couple other people interested, but just be aware that the cost that I have in here will probably change. I couldn't put them in here because we don't know what that's going to be yet, but our cost to operate the water system will increase because they will be doing double the sampling, double the checking chlorine, all that stuff. Because they'll be responsible for 2 well sites now instead of 1. So.
Any questions?
Any questions about that one? Like I said, that one's pretty cut and dry. I mean, I figure out what our income is and then I adjust our expenses accordingly. So that budget is actually balanced.
Right. Nope, I don't have any questions.
So the COLA thing, what is the percentage?
I mean, first we should probably, do we want to approve, how does this work? I mean, do we approve each budget?
Oh,
In other words, if you guys don't want to make any changes, if you want to make a motion to approve it, then this will be the one that we, unless you guys have changes you want to make to it.
Well, like you say, we can approve it and we can
Yeah,
always.
we can always amend it, right?
amend
If an unexpected expense comes, or, for instance, new water rates,
Right.
3 or 5% higher, are not baked into that
Right.
$845,000.
Right.
So that will change throughout the
Yes.
year, and we'll just have to present it and vote on an amendment, and
I make a motion, we approve, both budgets, the general fund and the water fund as presented.
Point of order, we need to do them separately.
Okay,
It's the, a motion to approve the general.
general fund then. All right, I make a motion to approve the general fund as presented.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by our Vice Mayor Robert Greenland to approve the general budget presented by our.
can I
deputy
say
clerk.
something real quick before you do that?
Yeah.
That one, you may want to wait until the next meeting, because I have to update the sheriff budget number, which is
Okay.
$19,000, so maybe make a motion just to update that with the new numbers we got, and then I'll change the general fund.
to accept it as,
I'm going to restate my motion. I make a motion that we approve the budget after the changes to the Volusia County Sheriff's Department have been made with a $15,000 increase.
Okay. I have a motion on the floor by Vice Mayor Robert F. Greenland to approve the budget, subject to changing and amending, and then to increase the increase from the Volusia County Sheriff's Department. Is there a second?
second,
Second by Councilwoman Wendy Richardson. Ready for the question? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried. Okay, and then you can vote.
Now I make a motion to approve the water department budget as presented.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by our Vice Mayor Robert F. Greenland to approve the town of Pierson water budget. And just for the motion, can you include the total amount of the budget there in your motion?
It's $455,450. Is that correct? Yes.
Okay. Let the record show that has been stated on the record. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Randy Peterson. Ready for the question? Roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Brady Peterson?
Yes.
Councilwoman Lenny Richardson?
yes.
Councilwoman Sergio Cardenas?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Robert Greenland?
Yes.
Mayor Samuel Bennett?
Yes. The point of order, did we do a roll call on the?
No.
No, I'm gonna bring that back and do a roll call on the first one that we did. The general.
Also, I don't think the number was stated on that.
Yeah, and state the number. Yes. Right. If you would just remake the motion and include the amount of the general budget in your motion.
Yes, I make a motion to approve, general fund budget for the town of Pierson for the fiscal year 2025 as presented in the amount of, is it 1.1 mil? Is that it?
It'll be the one on the last page, probably.
Yeah, $1,139,111.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second,
Second by Councilwoman Wendy Richardson. Ready for the question? Roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Brady Peterson?
Yes.
Councilwoman Lenny Richardson?
yes.
Councilwoman Sergio Cardenas?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Robert Greenland?
Yes.
Mayor Samuel Bennett?
Yes. So carried. Thank you.
Okay, then, so your next thing, or last thing, is your COLA rates. Cost of living adjustment. So Jim and I talked about this a little bit. We did some research. It looks like Volusia County and DeLand both went up 5%. I stuck with 3%. That's what we did last year. So if you look at this worksheet here, I tried to make it as simple as I could. You'll see your employee name out to the left, their current hourly rate on the top line there, and then their annual salary on the bottom line. Then the middle column shows you what their hourly and their yearly would increase by if you gave them a COLA increase of 3%. And then of course the new salary amount would be the last column. That would be their new hourly rate on the top line and their new annual salary. So if you look at the bottom, it would overall increase your annual payroll by $74.69.28. And that would, again, 25% of that allocated to the water fund, 75% to the general. And just so you know, the general fund budget that I did here, that 3% is baked into this. I went ahead and did that just because it's easier to see the numbers with the increase.
Mm-hmm.
So I could back them out of here and it will save you $7,400 if you choose not to do a cost of living increase. But that is up to the council.
Well, I think we need to give them a cost of living increase.
Absolutely.
I think we need to give them 3% increase. And I'll put that in the motion. In the form of a motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor of our Vice Mayor Robert F. Greenland to go with a 3% COLA raise for all employees. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Brandy Peterson. Ready for the question? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried.
Roll call.
Should we do roll call for that?
No.
No. Okay.
No. Okay. That finishes the agenda. The only other thing I'd like for someone to make a motion to set the final millage rate for 9/19/24. And what time are we having at 6 o'clock?
I'm good.
It's fine.
That's fine.
Mayor would entertain a motion.
So move.
We have a motion on the floor by our Vice Mayor Robert F. Greenland to set our final special millage rate meeting to set the final millage rate for 9/19/24 at 6 p.m. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Lenny Richardson. Ready for the question? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried. Okay. That finishes our agenda. Being no further business, thank you everyone for coming. This meeting is adjourned.
Now we can swim.